What is up everyone, Nick here, and in today's video we're going to be covering the progress I've made so far on my newest cosplay, Rinzler from TRON Legacy. So in this video we're mostly going to be focusing on the 3D printed components. We're also going to be focusing on the spandex undersuit I'm going to be using for the costume, and then we're going to check out the helmet that I have printed by PCB Way. Also, if you'd like to get your very own identity disc, just like this one, they're currently available on my Etsy. So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to buy one, and I'll set this one aside for now, and let's get right into the video. So it's been quite a while since I've been in front of the camera. I've mostly been busy working on the Mark 46. I'll try to release another update video before C2E2, which is next week already. It was supposed to be ready for WonderCon last month, but unfortunately I had some issues with the paint. Some of the clear coat did not cure in time for me to finish the costume, but right now the entirety of it is painted and it's ready to go. So now all that's left to do is to assemble it. But before we cover the Mark 46, we're going to be talking about Rinzler. So in the last update video, we mostly focused on the 3D scan I did of myself using the CR Scan Ferret Pro and how I 3D printed everything. And since that video, I have taken the time to sand the entirety of the costume. So now all of it is ready for molding. For example, here is the back of the actual suit. So it's a bunch of different components. We have like this lower, I don't want to call it a butt cheek since it's like the small of my back. Let's call it the small of my back. Then we have the lower back right here, and then we have these components and the neck piece. And right here, this little hole you see right here, this is where the mount for the identity disc is going to go. Now, if I am to stand up, I don't know how well you guys are going to see this, but it goes right there, and it fits pretty well around my back. Now it does have a really weird curve in the back, like the arch is like super pronounced, but that's not going to be a problem since this is going to be cast in silicone. So that means that by the time I actually create the mold for this piece and cast it in the silicone, it's going to be totally flexible and it's going to flex to the actual curve of my back. And then of course we have the actual front of the suit, which is right here. Et voila. So you can already see most of this part here has these hexagons. This is going to be cut out in the final product, and the hexagons that are gonna come through are gonna come through from the actual spandex itself. It's not gonna be this on the actual suit. And just from looking at it, we can see that there are a bunch of holes on the 3D printed part. Those are for all the lights that are going to be on the suit. And these are all going to be neopixels because I want the color to be able to change. Since Rinzler's costume has the red lights, but when he's Tron, spoiler alert, but you should know that already, go watch Tron Legacy. What are you doing here if you haven't seen it already, you goober? I'm sorry. Point being, I want the lights to change depending on what mood I'm feeling. Do I want to be Tron? Do I want to be Rinzler? Do I want to have an RGB rainbow effect? That sort of deal. And since these lights are so small and they're not going to be flexing much, I decided to have all the clear pieces, which are going to diffuse the light, be 3D printed in clear resin. And those 3D printed parts will be done by this channel sponsor, PCB Way. PCB Way is the industry leader when it comes to PCB fabrication and 3D printing services. From custom circuit boards to innovative 3D printed prototypes, PCB Way offers unparalleled quality, fast turnaround times, and competitive pricing. And if you check out the referral link in the description down below, you will get $10 off your very first order. So thank you again to PCB Way for sponsoring this video and for sponsoring the channel. Now let's get back to the 3D printed parts. So this costume was designed by Do3D, and most of these parts are supposed to be attached via magnets. And if we take a look at the neck right here, there's a bunch of holes which align with the magnet mounts on the neck on the other side. We're not going to be using those. Since we're only going to be focusing on casting the outside of the suit, like we don't need any of these contours whatsoever. This is going to be a one-part mold, and so is this. We're going to be figuring out our own mounting points as we go along. We're not going to be using these magnet holes since they're not even going to translate onto the final cast of this in silicone. That's a very long-winded way of saying we need to figure out how we're going to be mounting all this. Now, most of these parts are actually going to be glued down to the bodysuit, but quite a few bits like this back here, which actually needs to be removed to zip and unzip the bodysuit, this needs to be mounted somehow. I might end up cutting off the back here and gluing this to the bodysuit, but keeping the neck area separate, but we'll cross that bridge once we actually get there. Speaking of the bodysuit, let's check it out. Here we have, oh my, the actual costume that we're going to be using for the TRON cosplay. Now, this is a custom costume that I ordered from Heroes Time. Heroes Time is a website where you can buy all sorts of different bodysuits, mainly Spider-Man bodysuits. So originally for this costume, I was planning on sewing my own bodysuit using basic hexagon pattern spandex, but I've never sewn before, and I don't feel like this is now the time to do so. Thankfully though, Heroes Time offers this really cool service where if you send them a custom pattern with the design you would like to be made, they will make you a custom bodysuit for a fee. So I sent a message to my friend Kenneth from KA Cosplay Tech, which if you don't already follow KA Cosplay Tech on Instagram and social media and whatnot, something's wrong with you. Go do that. He's cool. He makes cool stuff. I'm just like aggressively promoting today. Anyways, right. Spandex. So I asked Kenneth if he could make me a custom pattern for my Tron cosplay, and he was more than happy to do so for me. So I got a nice pattern with the hexagon pattern from the Tron Legacy movie, and I had a custom bodysuit made. So it has a U-shaped zipper in the back, it has separate gloves for the costume, that way I can take off the gloves if needed, and a bunch of other really neat stuff that is very useful for a cosplay like this. So I'm not gonna put on the rest of the spandex today because I don't feel like it, so here's a glove. Look at the glove, pretty glove. And if I grab, here, let me switch up the gloves real quick and check this out. Yeah, buddy. This is gonna be cool, I can't wait. But yeah, you guys get the idea. You guys get the vision. Let me just set this aside for now. And that's pretty much all the progress I've made so far on the Rinzler cosplay. I've mostly been focused on finishing the Mark 46 and disc commissions. Again, if you want a disc, go check out my Etsy. So we have the spandex covered, we have all the 3D printed parts covered. All that's left in this arena is to actually make the molds and to start casting everything in silicone. Now we have to discuss the helmets. So before we start doing that, we need to unbox a package from PCB Way. So let's check that out. I got a big honkin' box here with me. Oh, it's much lighter than I thought it would be. Nice. So let me just grab an X-Acto somewhere. Okay, let's see how these prints came out. There we go. Mostly cut the cardboard, did not cut the tape, my bad. Ah, yes. This is much bigger than I thought it would be. So much foam, yeah. Yeah. Look at all these tiny baggies, nice. Okay, so all of these tiny little bags are actually resin prints, which I'm going to be using for the Rinzler cosplay. These are going to diffuse all the light across the suit. I'm gonna move these aside for now, because they are not the main attraction here today. Oh no, no. That is basically it. Oh yes. Okay, I'm gonna put this right here. I'm just gonna take out the last of these tiny little prints. I'm gonna start with this piece. So, I had the helmet for the Rinzler cosplay resin printed and tinted black, and then it was varnished. So it should be, oh my, y'all are not ready for this. Money shot, dude. Oh, this feels amazing. It's so smooth. It's so clear. It even has the text for the magnets for the 8 oh no. Oh wow. That is bonkers. It's almost purplish, that's how like clear it is. Okay, I'm gonna move this aside. And it's pretty heavy too. Like, this does not feel resin printed. This does not feel 3D printed whatsoever. It is ridiculously smooth. The quality of this piece is insane, and it doesn't seem to be warped or anything, which is fantastic. I don't know what to say. This is so cool. Okay, I guess we'll just open up the second one, which is the main half of the helmet. It's like a mummy to unwrap it. Ah! Ah! Okay. Okay. Come on. This is insane. Look at this. Yo! What? Can I put my, oh no, this may be an issue. I can't put my head in this. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. Ugh. Am I in the grid? Oh right, I have to rotate, I remember. Ooh, uh-oh. It's stuck on my temples. Okay, I'm gonna have to use a heat gun on this to slightly warp these two little corner pieces. There is a trick to putting this on because I did 3D print this on my FDM printers to make molds, but I didn't end up making those molds. And there is this weird trick where you have to put it upwards and turn it around, but I think these need to be slightly wider to allow me to do that. So let's see. Oh yeah, okay, so there is a little bit of warpage going on. That's okay. I can fix this with a little bit of heat. That explains it. Okay, so basically these two corners aren't aligning because this part of the helmet is slightly warped. Not to fret, that's not gonna be an issue. I had the exact same issue with my quarter scale helmet and I was able to fix it with just a little bit of heat. But this helmet is insanely gorgeous. Like, wow. So I'm gonna go fix this with a little bit of heat. I'll come right back as soon as I do that. And then we're going to start painting this helmet. So what I want to do for this helmet, because as you can see, it is ridiculously clear. It shouldn't be this clear for the final product. So instead of using just regular spray paint to tint the inside black, we're actually going to be using this can of VHT Nightshades. So basically this is a transparent black which is meant to tint lights on cars. Because when I tried doing this on the helmet, the problem is spray paint was extremely difficult to control. You would either not apply enough so you could still see through the helmet and also you could see like the splattering of the paint droplets, or you would put too much like I did with these two parts and you can't actually see through all that well. So since this is not a black paint but a black tinted paint, we might be able to see through this helmet no problem. So I'm gonna be testing some transparent parts, not this helmet right away, and we'll see how it turns out.
One eternity later.
I don't know where to begin with this, to be quite honest with you guys. I recorded a part of the video where I was gonna explain how the painting went and what I'm gonna do for the electronics and blah, 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 and then cut back to that. Only issue is I accidentally filmed all of that footage in slow motion and there's no audio. So here's the finished piece, I guess. And since filming the other part of this video, the helmet has been battle tested. I wore it to C2E2 with my TRON cosplay with the jacket and the disc, and it worked more or less how it was intended to work, but there were a few things that I didn't take into account for, which really hindered my experience wearing this helmet, which I'm going to have to fix when I make the 2.0 version of this helmet. So you can probably already see the helmet is much darker now. I've since added the headlight tint and a 2K clear coat on the inside of this helmet to seal that tint because it is very easy to scratch. Only issue is that 2K clear coat, once again, did not cure. Now the one silver lining to that is that at least it confirms that the clear coat I bought originally is not good. It's clearly expired because I added slightly more hardener than I should have just to make sure that it would cure this time, unlike what happened with my Mark 46 suit, and it never cured. It's all smudged up on the inside, but thankfully though, the tint inside the helmet hides those smudges. You can't see them from the outside. And speaking of the outside of the helmet, this thing looks absolutely wicked. When my head is inside this helmet, there's less ambient light flooding into the helmet and it's basically completely opaque. You can't really see my face under most lighting conditions, which is pretty sick. Now another downside to this 3D printed helmet, since it's resin is fairly fragile, and I learned that the hard way. Now the whole plan for the setup of this helmet to make sure it wouldn't fall off my head and I wouldn't have any accidents is that I would be gluing an elastic to the back plate right here, which I did do in the end. I did end up gluing one to the back so that it won't fall off. Now, while I was building this helmet, I had a really hard time gluing it down, so I just decided I wouldn't. I kept working on it, and while I was putting the battery pack in the back plate fell off. It fell only a few feet since I was crouched near the ground, and it broke. Now, if we take a look at the back plate, you can see that there are fractures along the back. I don't know how well it's catching up on camera, but I can assure you they are there. Thankfully though, I was able to re-glue everything just using CA glue, so I just took the parts, realigned them, CA glued them back together, and I wore it for most of Sunday and Sunday night, so at least the repairs actually held up, so that's cool. And since we're still on the topic of the helmet itself and the resin printed parts, the visibility in this helmet is kind of crazy. Now at first I was a little bit worried about the visibility because as soon as I painted that window tint on the inside of the helmet, it made everything hazy and I wasn't able to like read signs or anything. But as soon as I applied the 2K clear coat to the inside of the helmet, everything just became much more crisp. I could actually read while wearing the helmet. I could use my phone. I could talk to people. I could see people's faces. So it turned out pretty good in terms of the visibility. So if you've seen reels I've posted online already, you know that this thing actually lights up. So let me just plug in the battery. Now, if we take a look inside the helmet right here, we can see that there's a battery pack right here to power all the lights. And at the top here, there's some foam to keep it placed on my head. There's some more foam here and here. And under this foam at the center is where all the electronics are. Now, it's nothing too crazy. It's a Profi board 2.2 running the exact same code I used for the identity discs. Now, the only differences to the code I made is that I modified it slightly for the pinouts of the lights. So the inner C-ring on the identity disc can change color depending on which character font you want, pressing a button. Now, I modified the pins on the Profi board so that multiple pins do that same light up feature. That way you don't have to wait for all the lights to light up. There's a pin that goes to certain lights, there's another pin that goes to the backlight, and so on and so forth. So if I find the USB cable wire in here, there it is, and I plug this into the battery like so, you can see all the lights start to light up in this nice orange for Rinzler. Now on the inside of the helmet near the cheek, I soldered up a button to go all the way here so I could just reach into the helmet and hold the button and it will change the color to TRON. And then it turns yellow for Clue, and just like the regular identity disc, it has a bunch of different character fonts. We have a red one, which I really like. We have a green one, also really cool. And then we have the RGB effect. Here we go. And the lights turned out pretty good. It's just regular NeoPixel strips, which I cut to length and soldered to the Profi board. And the only issue, if you can call it that, is since the plastic is transparent, depending on which angle you look at the helmet from, you can see the individual pixels themselves from different angles, and it kind of looks odd. But honestly, for the effect of wearing this helmet and having such good visibility, I'll take that issue any day of the week. Initially, I did want to have sound effects inside the helmet, but it did screw around a little bit with the 5-volt battery, and it would reset it sometimes, and it had some really wonky side effects. And since I was on a time crunch and I was getting this thing ready for C2E2, I just decided to omit the speaker entirely. Now, with all that said, I did have some issues while wearing the helmet. Number one, it got extremely hot while wearing the helmet. I wore this thing for like 5 to 10 minutes at a time while I was at home and testing the helmet out, and I had no issues with visibility and with heat. However, as soon as I was at the con and I started walking around, throwing my identity disc all over the place, talking to people, not only was I getting hot from moving around and whatnot, but the steam from like talking inside the helmet would fog up the helmet like crazy. So the next helmet I'm going to be building, I will absolutely be including fans just to make sure that my visibility stays good and I don't get overly hot with the helmet on. Another thing that was really tricky while wearing the helmet is sound. For some reason, the way this helmet is made, it just muffles my voice like crazy. I've never had this issue while wearing Iron Man helmets. Maybe that's because the faceplate can open so I can actually project my voice, but with this helmet on, it is extremely difficult for me to speak. So in the future, I'm going to consider adding some sort of speaker and amplifier for my voice. I don't know how I'm going to do that exactly, but I will try my best to do that and maybe even include some sort of tutorial for the channel. But besides those two main issues, this helmet was absolutely spectacular. It was a real head turner at the convention. People took notice. People seemed very happy to see it. So that, that made my day. So speaking of a 2.0 version of this helmet, I would like to make this helmet differently, either by casting it in some sort of clear urethane resin, or if I can, because a lot of people on social media seem to want to have this helmet, I might consider investing money in having this injection molded somehow. Listen, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know how I'm going to do that just yet. Don't take that as a promise. It is purely just me rambling about, but I would love to have this injection molded in some sort of clear ABS or something like that, just so I have the peace of mind that if I were to drop this helmet, it won't shatter into a million pieces, because this helmet looks great, but it's extremely fragile, because at the end of the day, it's just 3D printed resin. So that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please stay tuned for future update videos on this TRON cosplay. Now that everything's 3D printed and sanded, we're going to be jumping right into the casting and molding process of this suit, so it should be done in no time flat. So stay tuned for all of that. And once again, a huge thank you to PCBWAY for not only sponsoring the channel, but for sponsoring this video and providing me with this gorgeous helmet for this TRON cosplay. And before this video ends, I might as well put on the helmet. So let's see if I can get this thing on. Yeah, there we go. There we go. I think this helmet turned out pretty good despite the issues I had with it, you know, breaking and whatnot, and the issues I had at the con with it fogging up, which is exactly why I will be working on a 2.0 version of this helmet. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.